Oh, I am? Who else didn't see it before we? Okay, well, I heard you talking about it. Okay, never mind. I'm always wrong, forget it. But I'm not, I've got a brain to say it's, you don't have a brain if you don't care. Of course I care. But as global stewards, it seems like we would want to do the refining here so that we're not getting back all the toxic crap from Asia. I just can't even understand how one precludes the other. So I still would like to see us expanding refining here and not doing it somewhere else. But I can't support this because there's so many refined products it talks about, and it does seem to me that somebody wants all fossil fuel stuff eliminated. I think it's a matter of time. Of course, we're always in transition. We will be in transition till the end of time. But I have natural gas where I live. I feel, and I said this at that meeting, I said, I kind of feel like a hypocrite. I like my natural gas, it's way cleaner. And, oh, it's just for 60 days, it's just for 60 days. Well, now it's not just for 60 days. So I think what we need to do in transitioning is to keep making things better. And I do think natural gas is much better than unrefined crude oil or coal, although I don't know what they're doing with coal, so I can't be an expert on it. But natural gas is way better. What is it? They had all bitumen, butane, propane. Those are refined. Those are byproducts of the refining, so they're not unrefined. And I just feel like there was a better way to do this. It got extremely polarized, and that really does upset me. And this isn't about, if there was one person who felt that way, I still do my own homework. So I don't care if you like my opinion or you don't, but I did all my homework. And I don't see that this is the way to do it. And I'm not trying to say this to make anybody else agree with me because they never do, so.
Mr. Donovan.
I'm gonna, well, first I want to thank everybody for their comments and heard some really important ideas. I'm going to speak in favor of the ordinance, but in response first to a couple of Councilmember Brenner's points, we did amend this so that we're recognizing that byproducts from the process, the refining process of cherry pie are excluded from this. It doesn't go as far as what I know you're looking for. But I want to speak in favor of the ordinance, which sounds different than a lot of the way it was described. There's nothing in this ordinance about climate change. I really appreciate the passion of everybody's testimony on climate change, but this is not about redefining the energy future of Whatcom County. It's not about us trying to reverse climate change. We're doing that in as small way as we can. But our council authority, our local authority relates to public health and safety, protecting the environment. And somebody mentioned that this did seem like it kind of came out at the 11th hour. That's a fair criticism, but that was the result of our inability to start working on this in the comp plan because of the constraints with the GPT project. That really wasn't opened up until about June, I think, late May or June. Then we have the state and the federal agency sending strong signals that a facility like that is not something that would probably be permitted, but we don't have a comp plan that can deal with that. So we sent stuff to the Planning Commission. We've come up with this moratorium. But I want to stress that something else happened in June. Is a unit train blew up not too far from here in Oregon. We have the governor of Oregon, the governor of Washington calling for moratoriums on these things. We're not alone. We need to come up with tools to deal with this. We need to figure out what we do as a county when we're faced with looking at permits that we're being told pretty strongly by higher levels of government. We've heard testimony today about federal law that we're obligated to be consistent with. That makes these sorts of facilities highly unlikely to be permittable. So we need time to plan this, and that's what the moratorium is for. That's why I'm supporting it.
Mr. Browne?
So, singling out the gentleman with 6 kids who thanked us for giving him a night out, and asked the question, what is the problem we're trying to solve? So I think it's a fair question, and I'm going to try and deal with that to a degree. Now, much has been said about the environmental concerns of this issue, so I'm not going to cover that, but what I want to focus on is why I think this moratorium makes a good decision for most of our existing local businesses and their employees. And if you'll bear with me, I'll try and lay that out for you. First off, I think our community has a serious, legitimate concern, public safety concern, about the transportation of oil by rail. This July was actually the 3rd anniversary of the Quebec oil by rail disaster. It killed 47 people, 5 of whom could not be buried because there was no remains left to give their families some sense of closure. Half the town was destroyed by fire, the other half was contaminated by petroleum residue, and the damage to the community was estimated at about $300 million. If there's a real concern here that if we were to end up becoming a crude oil transshipment hub, that the congestion alone would make it inevitable that an oil train will end up exploding in the community. Now, the loss of life could clearly be severe, depending on where it is. The loss of jobs and the impact on local businesses would be severe. Property values would decline, and it could take us decades for our economy to recover. So this raises the obvious question about what is going to be the impact of this moratorium on the existing jobs in Cherry Point. And I want to make it clear, as an American businessman and an American environmentalist, that I believe our global and our local responsibility is to ensure that the refining of American crude is done on American soil under American environmental standards by American workers. I do not believe that a properly crafted moratorium will impact the existing jobs at Cherry Point. The refineries at Cherry Point currently export a significant amount of refined fossil fuels, such as jet fuel to Victoria. And my understanding is that the refineries have expressed no plans to build crude oil export facilities. There's therefore a moratorium that only restricts new projects related to the shipment of unrefined fossil fuels from Cherry Point should have no impact on the existing jobs. We also heard tonight that many people in the refinery communities around the country are concerned about the recent repeal of the export ban on crude oil. They're concerned because they don't want to see their jobs exported offshore, because the crude oil is exported offshore and refined in jurisdictions where there is poor environmental controls, and then find that the refined fuel is brought back into the country and competes with what we produce locally. Any increase in transportation by rail to supply unrefined fossil fuel transshipment facilities would, as mentioned before, result in an exponential increase in the congestion on the rail lines. And while the railroad crossing is blocked for a few minutes to allow the passage of trains that currently move through the county, typically present at most an inconvenience, many residents, workers, students, business owners, and emergency service personnel are concerned about the impact if the number of trains crossing our roads was to increase dramatically. Perhaps the most recent issue of concern on this is the prospect of additional road closures like the recent one approved for Valley View Road. Now, I found this one really puzzling because while the county's 1884 right-of-way to construct a road across through what is Valley View Road was trumped by the rail's right to close it down, even though they built their railroad across the road 80 years later. So while we were there first as a county, the railroad was able to close it down. Now, the problem with that is, of course, the county could build overpasses to relieve the congestion. But an overpass will cost us between $20 and $40 million each. And that's a bill that the county residents would have to pay because under federal law, the railroad, I think, is limited to paying only 5% of the cost of a railroad crossing. So if the rail traffic increases dramatically, the impact is going to be felt by the existing businesses and the existing residents. And the only way for us to mitigate that impact is frankly to raise taxes so we can pay for the rail crossings so we can just get back to where we started from. The other issue here is, I want to sum up here. Our refinery workers want to keep their jobs, and I really understand and respect that. Our existing businesses want to move their goods and employees unhindered. Our fishermen want to be able to continue to fish, and we all want that ambulance or fire truck to arrive quickly when they're called. These were the business-related reasons I voted to support the moratorium on new unrefined fossil fuel transshipment facilities. I will say, I think while the emergency moratorium, I just want to remind people, the emergency moratorium and the 6-month interim moratorium have a different definition of what unrefined fossil fuels are. We worked on that in previous council meetings, and I think it's a much improved definition. I think, frankly, we need to do a little bit more work on that one because at the end of the day, from when I put my environmental hat on, you know, there's an issue about burning natural gas that we can't ignore versus other sources of energy. So, for the businessman in me and the environmentalist in me, I'm supporting the moratorium.